The final call has been made. King Charles didn't pause. He didn't negotiate. He ended it. Quietly. Completely. When Meghan and Harry received the message in Montecito, panic set in. No titles. No return. No role. It was the decision they thought would never come, and now they're begging for a second chance. But it's too late. The palace has closed its doors for good. And this time, there's no coming back. The final decision. In the quiet corridors of Buckingham Palace, a decision was made that sent shockwaves through London, Montecito, and royal circles worldwide. King Charles III, now 77 years old and reigning since September 8, 2022, reportedly reached what senior palace insiders described as his final and absolute ruling on Prince Harry, age 41, and Meghan Markle, age 44. According to reports, the king made it clear that neither Harry nor Meghan could ever return to a part-time role as working royals, a choice that closes the chapter that began when they stepped back from royal duties in January 2020. This was not a negotiation, insiders insist. This was a firm, structural line drawn by the monarch. Sources close to the palace say Charles took months to arrive at this moment, carefully weighing each public appearance, brand venture, speech, and subtle hint of connection to the monarchy that Meghan and Harry had made since their departure. The seriousness of the decision was underscored by the silence that enveloped its delivery. There were no grand announcements, no velvet envelopes, no public statement. Instead, the message reached Montecito in private, delivered directly and without fanfare, in a way designed to leave no room for misinterpretation or appeal. Critics inside the palace have described how unusual this calm yet absolute tone is for a monarch who once tried, time and again, to buffer controversies quietly rather than confront them directly. The decision, as revealed by insiders, wasn't merely about restricting titles or functions. It fundamentally reset the relationship. They say the king explicitly ruled that Meghan and Harry may never again publicly present themselves as associated with the monarchy without written permission, even in future brand projects, speaking engagements, or media deals. This includes provisions that any attempt to indirectly imply a royal connection, especially in entertainment, advocacy, or high-profile public appearances, would be considered brand overreach, something the palace wants to strictly avoid. It's a stark contrast to how the family once managed departures like the one in 2020, where options for contact and ceremonial involvement were minimally left open. This wasn't just a decision, it was a declaration. But there was more beneath the surface. Palace sources explained that this absolute stance did not emerge overnight. Months of behind-the-scenes analysis, quiet warnings, and coded communication led to one unavoidable moment. The king's advisors grew deeply concerned about how Meghan was positioning herself publicly and what it could mean for the monarchy's identity. The next section takes you inside the palace's reasoning and the slow build-up to this final ruling. The pattern that forced the king's hand. The palace did not reach its final decision in a vacuum. According to insiders, what began as a quiet concern gradually evolved into a pattern that palace decision-makers could no longer ignore. Over the past 2 years, Meghan Markle's shift into high-profile media projects and public brand work, particularly her Netflix series With Love, Meghan released on March 4, 2025, was viewed internally as blurring the boundaries between private celebrity and formal royal identity. What startled palace aides the most wasn't just the volume of Meghan's public activity, but the tone and implication of that activity. Subtle references to past royal roles, brand imagery that touched on legacy associations, and a global media presence that reached audiences across North America, Europe, and Asia were interpreted not as casual public life, but as an active, strategic positioning. This wasn't a single interview or statement. It was a decade-long cadence of visibility that palace protocol officers tracked closely through timelines, speeches, and public messaging. Internally, advisors grew particularly uneasy by late 2025, citing multiple coordinated public campaigns and brand teasers that suggested Meghan still held a symbolic link to the royal institution. Some aides believed that this implicit association could be exploited by global media, a risk to the monarchy's official narrative and public identity. Royal experts and aides kept records and watched how certain phrases, events, and appearances generated headlines internationally, not merely as celebrity stories, but as influential narratives affecting public perception of the monarchy itself. It was no longer entertainment. It was influence. Compounding these concerns were conversations among senior advisors that a continuation of this pattern might create a confusing dual narrative. One where the monarchy had an official face, and another where a private figure leveraged historical connection without accountability to the institution. For an institution grounded in centuries of consistency, this was a challenge too substantial to ignore. As one senior advisor reportedly warned, "If we don't set boundaries now, there won't be any boundaries left later." These internal tensions, tracked through dozens of meetings and policy reviews, ultimately helped push King Charles toward a decision that advisors now call institutionally necessary, even if it was personally difficult. But when the king's decision finally reached Montecito, it wasn't a dramatic proclamation. It was quiet, deliberate, and it hit Meghan and Harry like a bolt from the blue. The next section goes inside the moment Meghan realized the palace's ruling was not just firm, it was final. This was the instant when belief turned to disbelief, and disbelief turned to panic. The moment Meghan heard, "It's over." The final palace ruling did not arrive in a velvet envelope during a broadcast announcement or a diplomatic dinner. It came quietly, privately, and unmistakably. Sources close to Meghan Markle say that when the message landed in December 2025, she was at her home in Montecito, California, with Prince Harry and their children, Prince Archie, age 6, and Princess Lilibet, age 4. Reportedly, she read the communication once and then again. The tone was unmistakable, final, and unappealable. Though most of the world only sees headlines, insiders describe the delivery as calm, precise, and resolute. The kind of tone a monarch uses when his decision is set. At first, Meghan's reaction was quiet disbelief. Those close to the moment say her eyebrows furrowed, her breath slowed, and confusion gave way to realization. This was not a warning letter or a chance to respond. It was a declaration of closure. Meghan was reportedly stunned, moving from confusion to panic as the implications sank in. For the first time since she left royal life in 2020, she was unmistakably on the outside of the institution she once helped shape. Within moments, her advisors were in action. Meghan's team, consisting of brand managers, legal consultants, public relations specialists, and media strategists, recognized the gravity of what had just happened. Unlike past palace signals marked by softened language or gradual distancing, this was absolute structural closure. No access, no subtle privileges, no unofficial support, all quietly rescinded. It was the end of royalty as a backdrop, and the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter for Meghan's public identity. Meghan's reaction wasn't the only one. Prince Harry, having already grappled with legal battles, family rifts, and public scrutiny, now faced a personal reckoning. A moment where love, loyalty, and identity intersected with royalty's oldest boundaries. In the next section, we'll explore Harry's emotional response and how this decision deepened fractures within the family. A reaction that may shape their future story even more dramatically than the decision itself. Meghan's public strategy sparks palace alarm. Meghan Markle's public trajectory after stepping back from royal duties in January 2020 wasn't quiet. It was strategic, high-profile, and global. In March 2025, she released her lifestyle series with Love, Meghan on Netflix, produced with Archewell Productions, set to have multiple seasons and a holiday special in December 2025, capturing cooking, family life, and personality moments that echoed royal imagery in subtle ways. But what looked like personal branding from the outside registered differently inside Buckingham Palace, where aides noted that public messaging repeatedly aligned with the royal narrative without explicit palace affiliation, raising internal concerns about blurred boundaries. Sources close to palace protocol argued that this created confusion about Meghan's status as a private citizen versus a public personality with surrogate royal influence. Palace insiders weren't just watching with Love Meghan. They were tracking a pattern of public appearances, philanthropic mentions, and media teasers where Meghan's identity seemed to float between former duchess and lingering royal symbolic presence. This was not one press interview or a single Netflix promo. It was a timeline of public strategic positioning that suggested to some aides that Meghan was not stepping away, but rather reframing her brand with invisible ties to monarchy. Critics inside the palace noted that this contributed to a narrative that Meghan was still an unofficial royal ambassador, and that, if left unchecked, could destabilize the official royal narrative that King Charles III, age 77, and his advisors were trying to control. The concern wasn't trivial. Senior advisors had discussed how Meghan and Prince Harry's global presence, amplified by millions of followers in North America, Europe, and beyond, risked creating two versions of royal identity, one official, one commercial. A palace aide reportedly said privately, "If we don't set boundaries now, there won't be any boundaries left later." This sentiment was repeated in protocol briefings, security discussions, and communication strategy sessions throughout late 2025, showing a seriousness that went far beyond typical media annoyance. As palace anxiety turned into consensus, the monarch and his closest advisors began discussing not just what Meghan had done, but what it signified, the potential for her influence to overlap with official monarchical channels. They feared a scenario where public perception could start to mirror influence without accountability, making the boundary between royal insider and royal outsider dangerously ambiguous. This concern set the stage for action. In the next section, we dive into the meetings where King Charles and senior aides crafted the decision that changed everything. Inside the King's strategy meetings. In the weeks leading up to what would become a historic final ruling, King Charles III met with his closest advisors in a series of intense strategy sessions inside Buckingham Palace and Clarence House. Far from cursory staff check-ins, these were multi-day, high-level briefings involving the Privy Council, senior communications leaders, legal experts, and protocol officers, the very teams reserved for institution-level threats or legacy decisions. According to sources familiar with palace operations, the atmosphere was not informal or routine. It was urgent and analytical, reflecting worry over the perceived erosion of monarchical identity. Documents, timelines, and media analyses were spread across tables, as Charles and his team examined Meghan's public appearances, brand strategies, speeches, and other public messaging dating back through 2024 and 2025. Every detail was studied frame by frame, not with emotion, but with academic precision. Assistants documented patterns of wording, timing, and platform choice. External commentators were reviewed for influence, and royal imagery, even tangential, was flagged for examination. It wasn't anger or personal conflict driving these meetings, it was long-term brand protection, the monarchy's equivalent of a corporate risk assessment. At one point, a senior advisor reportedly told the king directly, "If you don't act now, you will lose control of the royal narrative." That phrase was reportedly repeated in memos and private briefings. In the palace's view, Meghan's global platform, amplified by millions of followers and supported by lucrative media partnerships, posed a latent risk to the official and constitutional identity of the monarchy, especially if she continued to operate in a space where royal heritage and personal projects seemed to intersect. Whether it was Netflix deals, speaking engagements, or public statements about identity, advisors believed the lines were blurring in a way that could confuse audiences worldwide. King Charles, known for careful deliberation and deep respect for institutional history, listened quietly through each session. He did not raise his voice. He did not react emotionally. But as aides later described, there came a moment when his tone shifted from consideration to resolve. The tone a sovereign adopts when a decision is already made in his mind. The room, initially analytical and exploratory, became decisive and focused on conclusion. Boundaries would be defined, structural protocols would be set, and no future ambiguity would be permitted. This was not about Meghan personally. It was about preserving the monarchy's narrative authority for the next generation of royals. The quiet delivery of the king's decision was exactly the point. No theatrics, no leaks, just finality. But how did Meghan react when she first saw the palace's absolute ruling? What went through her mind? And how did Prince Harry respond when he heard the news directly from the king? Not through headlines, not through friendly advisors, but face to face. In the next section, we explore that emotional moment that shattered assumptions and forced a private reckoning. Meghan's reaction. When the palace's decision finally reached Meghan Markle in Montecito, California, it did not arrive like a traditional royal notice. No velvet envelope, no courteous preamble, no public announcement. Instead, it was delivered quietly, privately, and unmistakably clear in its language and intent. The chapter was closed forever. Sources close to Meghan say that when she first read the decision, written, direct, and without wiggle room, she felt confusion first, then disbelief, and ultimately panic. This was not a negotiation letter. It was a declaration of closure, something she reportedly never expected. According to insiders, Meghan's initial reaction was stunned silence. She read the message once, then again and again, trying to reconcile the written finality with her expectations. No emotional outburst initially because the shock had to settle. Confusion gave way to a dawning realization of totality. Her advisors, seeing her shift from bewilderment to disbelief, immediately sprang into action. Phone calls, rapid messaging, briefing internal teams in hours rather than days. This was not last-minute damage control. It was crisis management in real time. Reports from close sources indicate that Meghan's stance quickly moved from stunned silence to frantic questioning. Who signed this? Who agreed to this? Was there a misunderstanding? Was it even genuine? And when she was told that the decision was indeed final, and had the full authority of the sovereign, the atmosphere changed. Panic set in. This wasn't simply a setback or an awkward palace move. This was a structural separation that ended any future soft return, collaboration, or shared narrative with the monarchy. It was, in her own view, an institutional cutting off. This was the moment that Meghan understood the king's decision wasn't about negotiation, appeasement, or diplomacy. It was about finality. And from confusion came frustration. And from frustration came a realization that the path forward would require reinvention separate from the monarchy she once embodied. Some insiders describe this as the point when Meghan's confidence, so often broadcast in her public persona, cracked under the weight of absolute closure. It was not just personal. It was professional, emotional, and legacy-defining. And it was only the beginning of how her world would pivot next. Harry's unexpected reaction. When Prince Harry, age 41, learned of King Charles III's, age 77, final decision, not just firm but irreversible, the emotional weight hit him hard. Having flown to the United Kingdom in September 2025 to be with his father, their first face-to-face in 19 months, he had hoped reconciliation might smooth the rift between the two, or at least open the door for future limited royal work. But palace insiders say that meeting, although warm in tone, ended without the half-in, half-out role Harry had quietly dreamed of. Instead, Charles reiterated Queen Elizabeth II's long-standing stance: no senior royal can serve dual roles across the Atlantic, and no exceptions would be made. According to sources, Harry didn't explode. He absorbed the king's words with a heavy mix of shock and frustration. In May 2025, he had publicly expressed desire to reconcile with the monarchy, even lamenting his lost security arrangement and strained relationship with Charles in a BBC interview, admitting his devastation over the court battle and yearning for unity. But this hearing, not on the steps of Buckingham Palace or broadcast around the world, occurred in a private room with Charles calm and resolute. The lack of theatrical drama made the blow even more profound. No fanfare, no warnings, just a sovereign's steady affirmation that the chapter was closed. In that moment, Harry began to feel something deeper than disappointment, a realization of finality that even his best efforts might never restore his ties to the institution he was born into. Insiders say he asked for time to reconsider the implications, questioned whether the language could be adjusted, soft-ended, or framed more gently. But Charles, firm in his decision and supported by months of counsel from senior protocol officers, maintained a consistent policy stance. This was not a temporary pause or a momentary rebuke. It was structural and long-term, a strategy that Charles described as necessary to safeguard the monarchy's identity for decades to come. But Harry wasn't the only one processing this seismic shift. Across the ocean in Montecito, California, Meghan's reaction was unfolding in real time, and it was utterly different. While Harry tried to digest nuance and nuance alone, Meghan moved through shock to scrambling strategy, swiftly launching into damage control mode. In the next section, we follow the Sussexes' inner circle as they convene a rapid response, a shift that could redefine brand, narrative, and legacy for years. Meghan's immediate counter-response. When the final palace directive landed in Meghan Markle's inbox in December 2025, she did not react with fury. She reacted with calculation. Meghan, age 44, is a public figure with years of media strategy and brand building behind her. and her immediate instinct was to mobilize her team within hours. Legal counsel, PR strategists, and brand experts were summoned into crisis mode, not days later, but minutes after she fully absorbed the king's message. Reportedly, the group began dividing the situation into major response paths: public image, media framing, legal boundaries, and brand positioning. Context: Meghan's persistent strategic visibility, including media projects and public initiatives, has been a consistent part of her post-royal identity. Within Meghan's circle, advisors discussed three possible routes. Option 1: a quiet reset, presenting calm, gracious composure in a public statement, respecting tradition while subtly expressing dignity in loss. Option 2: narrative reclamation, a controlled media appearance, documentary, or feature piece reframing the palace decision as a symbol of evolving institutions and personal growth. Option 3: a direct counterattack, a pointed public address hinting at broader themes of fairness, identity, and agency without naming the monarchy directly. According to sources close to the team, there was a quiet majority favoring the third option, as it harnessed controversy into influence, a strategy Meghan has wielded effectively before. While Meghan formulates her response, the world is already reacting. Headlines from London to Los Angeles are tracking every angle, from supporters lauding her resilience to critics questioning her motives. But there's another crucial piece in this drama: the international backlash and public sentiment. In the next section, we'll explore how the global stage, media, commentators, and ordinary citizens alike, is interpreting the palace's absolute break and what it means for Meghan and Harry's future story. Global reaction and media storm. When news of King Charles's unequivocal decision spread across the globe, it didn't stay quiet for long. British outlets, US network shows, and social media platforms erupted within days. Headlines ranged from "Harry won't return as part-time royal" to "Monarchy draws hard line after Sussex rift," capturing a wide spectrum of interpretations. One key report emphasized that King Charles reiterated Queen Elizabeth II's rule against half-in, half-out roles for royals, confirming Harry will not resume official duties. In the United Kingdom, commentators debated the cultural implications of the palace's stance. Some analysts called it a necessary reinforcement of tradition and discipline, arguing that allowing exceptions would dilute the monarchy's authority. Others, however, saw the move as stark and uncompromising, reflecting a generational shift inside Buckingham Palace, one less willing to absorb controversy or ambiguity. Across the Atlantic in the United States, commentators framed the decision in terms of personal freedom versus institutional constraint, questioning whether the monarchy can remain relevant in a world where personal narrative and brand identity hold significant power. While the world watches, internal royal dynamics keep shifting. The palace's decision did more than shut a door. It redraws lines of influence and authority for the decade ahead. But now, as damage control turns into a long game, Meghan and Harry face a crucial choice: pursue reconciliation through public diplomacy, or lean into global narrative power to redefine their legacy outside the monarchy, a choice with profound personal and cultural implications. What comes next? With the dust still settling after King Charles III delivered his final decision in late November 2025, the world is now watching Meghan Markle and Prince Harry with laser focus. What will they do next? That's the question dominating newsrooms in London, boardrooms in Los Angeles, and royal watching circles around the globe. The palace has gone silent, refusing all comment. while Montecito remains under a quiet but visible state of lockdown. Sources close to the couple say their entire strategy team has entered what insiders are calling narrative redirection mode. That means everything from brand messaging to future public appearances is being restructured behind closed doors. In private, Meghan is said to be furious, but focused. According to a source close to her media consultant team, she is determined to reshape the conversation, not just to regain public sympathy, but to re-establish influence that now feels threatened. But her options are limited. King Charles's directive was not symbolic, it was structural. Meghan can no longer use royal insignia, imply royal ties, or associate her work with the British monarchy in any form without explicit approval. That changes everything. For someone who once commanded global attention as the Duchess of Sussex, walking beside Queen Elizabeth II in 2018, standing on palace balconies and leading international initiatives, this sudden separation is more than just emotional. It's a full reputational reset. What began as a whispered conflict behind palace walls has now exploded into one of the monarchy's most defining modern turning points. Meghan and Harry, once at the center of global royal fascination, are now standing firmly outside the gates. And as they prepare for the next phase of their lives, one built without royal support, all eyes are on whether they'll rise again or fade into history as the couple who couldn't bridge two worlds. Whatever comes next, it begins now.